Welcome everyone to Negotiations 101. I'm Alice, the PA at Titmouse and Creative Director here at AIA. In this session, we're gonna clarify what the negotiation process looks like and provide some strategies for a successful negotiation. So here's kind of the outline of what we're gonna go over today. We're gonna start out with what the early stages of negotiation look like. So this will cover when you should initiate negotiations and doing some market research on what things are like in the industry at the moment. And the second section, arguably the most important section, is stating your case. So you want to gather information about your job performance, and then you want to set your target. What is your target number for that salary? And then finally, we're going to go over what the actual negotiation meeting looks like and then discuss some outcomes. During this section, we're going to go over some communication skills that can help you during that meeting and then go over some outcomes that happen after the negotiation. All right, we'll start with early stages. So the first thing to consider is when to initiate negotiations. So timing is really important, and you kind of want to be on the same page with your employer. So these are some times where you can initiate negotiations where people are kind of expecting you to start those conversations. So you can start negotiations after receiving that initial job offer. That's a great time to negotiate if you feel like the rate that they're asking is not what you were expecting. A great time is 1 year at the same job. It's a pretty typical time to ask for a raise if your employer is not providing an annual increase already. Another time that you can ask is when you get a title change or a promotion. So this can be that you have more responsibilities now, and so you would like to ask for a raise. And finally, this is kind of like a catch-all circumstance, but if you're experiencing significant changes in your job when you move from one pipeline step to another step, you might find that your job requirements are changing a lot, and perhaps you might have added job responsibilities. If you find yourself in that situation, you might consider negotiating for a higher salary in that instance. Alrighty, so before you do negotiations, it's good to do some market research on your role. So you want to understand the current industry standards for other people in similar roles and similar levels of experience. So you can consider some primary sources. So you can ask your coworkers if you have coworkers who are working in the same job classification, or you can like kind of reach out to other people that you know within the industry and kind of ask. It might be a little bit awkward, but most people are pretty open to sharing information if you ask politely. Asking other people who are in the same role as you are in. You can also check out some like broad online sources, such as Glassdoor. If you haven't heard of Glassdoor, Glassdoor is like a job information website where people can leave reviews on companies and also specific job roles about their salaries, job experience. It's a really great resource to learn what other people in your job in the same job title as you are making and what their experience is at other studios. Another source could be LinkedIn. LinkedIn usually has like salary ranges and different on their job postings. And then lastly, if you go on Instagram, you can follow the Salty Animator page. They have a giant spreadsheet that they continuously update on the most current like salaries. So people voluntarily submit their information anonymously, and then they populate this giant spreadsheet. So that one's a really good one to look at as well. I put a little asterisk that companies based in California and New York, as of recently, must include salary ranges on their job postings. So because most animation studios are based in California or New York, you can expect to see some numbers there because of recent legislation. Yay! Job transparency is very important. So now that you've kind of done a little bit of research, it's time to be a little bit more specific to what your situation is and start stating your case. So here's some things that you can consider as you move forward. So you want to gather information about what your experience working at the job. So some things you really want to consider are what skills have you gained during your time? What skills are you coming in with, and what did you learn? And something you also want to highlight is growth. what have you learned? How have you been growing at your current role? And how do you plan to continue growing moving forward in this role? The third thing you want to consider is value. What sort of value are you bringing to your company, and how will you continue bringing value to in your new role? Um, or how have you brought value to the company? So all of these things kind of based on the employer side. And finally, some things to kind of wrap up with all of these three things is numbers. So having some hard numbers can also help um, boost your boost your negotiating power. So having hard numbers, I like completed X amount of tasks every week, or I delivered this like result in this amount of time. So having some good numbers can also help your case. Tracking growth. So as you continue in your job journey, tracking your growth is really important, and this will help kind of prepare you for the negotiating stage. So one thing I highly encourage is going to your manager and asking for a 6-month performance review if that's not already baked into your reviews, like your HR tracking system. So request for a 6-month performance review. That's a really good time to ask your manager how you're doing and how you can continue to improve. That's also a good time to mention that you might be looking to ask for a raise or a merit increase in the coming months when you hit that 1 year mark. And other than that, if you don't have like a 6-month performance review, I also encourage you to have regular check-ins with your managers. And that'll also give you a really good temperature check on how you're doing and how you can improve. And then each time you meet with your manager, I encourage you to listen to their feedback and also take notes. This way that when it comes time for negotiation, you have some hard and fast like quotes from your manager that you hear from them that you know for sure that you've done well in. Additionally, you can find other feedback from your coworkers and peers. You can ask them either do like a practice negotiating session or a practice interview so that you can gauge from your peers how well you've been doing and what you can improve on. And to wrap up both of these, keeping a work journal or a work log can be really helpful in this situation. That way, like if you're going to your day-to-day work, but you're always so busy, it can be really hard to kind of remember all of the things you've accomplished during your work. So keeping a work log or a work journal or task list handy can be really good. So when it comes time to negotiate, you can look back on all of the things you've done and really cherry pick those best moments. Finally, arguably, maybe one of the most important slides in this presentation is setting your target. So you really want to set a target number. So this is the idea you want for your salary. So one number you want to have in mind is your base number. So this is the base number that you need at minimum. This is like to cover your rent, to cover groceries. What is this minimum number that you require um, to continue at this job? And this base number can also be the industry average. So based off of that market research that I mentioned before, this base number is the number you need to hit at minimum. And then the most important number is your reach number. This should be your ideal number, and this is kind of like above the industry average and above your base number. So when you go into negotiations, you always want to propose your reach number first, because most employers will go into negotiations maybe trying to lowball you a little bit. So asking for that reach number first will either be a happy surprise that you actually get your reach number, or when they negotiate you down, you might kind of negotiate down to your base number. So please always remember to propose your reach number first. And so some ideas on how to gauge where your reach number should be is if you work at like a slightly lower salary and you're like on an hourly kind of system or low rates, your reach number should be $1 to $2 more per hour than the industry average or what you're expecting. So just a little bit more. And then if you're kind of at the mid-range to a high salary, you want your reach number to be 5 to 15% more than your base number. So some ideas on how comfortable you feel negotiating up your salary So definitely those ranges are flexible, but those are some guidelines that you can do to kind of gauge what your reach number should be. Also, when you enter negotiations, sometimes you might want to consider things other than your salary. You can also consider benefits that maybe they're not providing for you at the moment, but you would like to have. So one thing is maybe you want to negotiate for better healthcare. That can be a little bit complicated with enrollment periods and such, but some other really strong contenders could be part-time off. So maybe if like you're going up, maybe you want to have more time off. So maybe that's something you can negotiate. Or work from home if you really valuable having a flexible work situation and you think that this company really values your workload, you can also negotiate for a more flexible work format, such as work from home. And obviously, there are other benefits that you might consider based off of your unique situation. All right, speeding through everything during negotiation and outcomes. So, so I'm going to go over some communication skills and how you can kind of launch those meetings and then how to kind of navigate that negotiation conversation. So the first step is obviously to ask for the meeting. So you want to request for a meeting to discuss negotiation in writing. So usually this way you can write down and send an email or maybe like it's a chat to your manager requesting a meeting. This way you have it in writing and it's not just floating in this weird verbal void where nobody knows and you have no receipts. So when you request for that meeting, be professional. I like to advocate for stating your intent and being clear what you're asking this meeting for. You can say it's a check-in where you would like to discuss a merit increase. You can say something like that. Yeah, please avoid negotiating only in writing though. Please like try and have like some face-to-face conversation, have a meeting to talk with that person rather than trying to hash it out through emails or just through chat. And then before the meeting, prepare your talking points, just like the other slides before. You want to make sure you have your reach number in mind and also some key like points such as your skills, how you've grown, the value you bring to the company, and some numbers to back those up. And then during that actual meeting, practicing those conversation skills. So like in the previous slides, ask some of your coworkers or even like maybe like a lower level manager to practice having this conversation, practice negotiating. That can really boost your confidence going into the actual negotiating conversation. So some things to keep in mind when you're actually in that meeting is understanding their communication style, whether they're a little bit more friendly, whether they're a little bit more formal, or they prefer to be a little bit more laid back, or do they prefer things to be really direct? So kind of understanding their communication style so that you can communicate the most effectively. Um, so one thing you can do during that conversation is trying to find connections. So remember that this is not just you pitching your case. Your employer ideally would be on your side. So you want to find connecting points in that conversation. When they say something, you want to try and find something in your talking points that kind of link to what they're talking about. So maybe, oh, something about the project is fresh on their mind and they're like, oh, like this meeting went really well. So you can kind of bounce off of that and kind of say, oh, yeah, I was a part of those meetings and I did X, Y, and Z during them. So finding connections in that conversation to launch into the talking points you want to talk about. And finally, I encourage you to try to be as concise and clear as possible during that conversation. You really don't want that much ambiguity. After all, ideally going to the conversation, you both understand what you're there to do. You're there to talk about your salary and hopefully get a raise. So being clear in your communication is really key. And definitely you don't want to try and ramble too much because you want to keep the meeting short, respecting people's times. Negotiation meetings typically are only around 15 minutes long, maybe 30 if it's really, really long, but really they should be short, simple, and hopefully low pressure as well. And then after negotiation, hopefully it went well, but even if it's not, that's okay. Be sure to send a thank you email regardless. That's just a really nice way to kind of close off that conversation. You can also kind of recap your talking points in a thank you email as well to kind of reiterate your points after the fact. But here's some things to consider for outcomes after negotiation as well. So, unfortunately, maybe it's due to budget or for some other reason, there might be an undesired outcome. If that is the case, you can, if you feel strongly that you really deserve that merit increase, you can request another meeting to follow up. And when you do have that second meeting, prepare some new information. This can be going to your manager and kind of explaining to them what happened to get some extra feedback on what you can do better in that next meeting, to really kind of strengthen your case. And then there's also, you might just have to accept the result. You can also request the reason behind the decision, and ask for some of those reasonings. It could be outside of your control. Maybe the budget really is too constrained. Maybe there's not enough time. X, Y, and Z, lots of different reasons why you might not get your desired outcome. And ultimately, you can take this as a learning experience. Negotiation is a skill that you will have to practice throughout your career journey. So at least you can learn from that. And you also might have a good outcome. You might hit success. So after they do get back to you saying that they will give you an increase, you can expect that decision to come in writing. So even if they verbally kind of um, affirm like a raise, you want to make sure you actually see that in writing. So expect some follow-up paperwork, either like in an email or and make sure you get paperwork from HR because your documents will have to change if you are getting an increase. And finally, I encourage you to also share your experience with other people. And like if you had coworkers and peers kind of help you along the way, share with them on what the result was. I mean, celebrate your successes. It feels great when someone really is able to argue their worth. And then an extra step, if you're comfortable, you can also post on LinkedIn that you successfully got a raise. Or on other social media platforms, but LinkedIn is kind of the place to post job related things. Yeah, so super short and simple. I'm totally open to answering any questions that you might have. I find the negotiations process is very individualized. So this is some broad information, but you want to kind of treat your negotiation case by case. So, opening the floor to any questions now.
Well, we did not receive any text questions, so while you guys kind of formulate any some questions, I'm gonna hit you with some a couple broad questions that I kind of had wondering about. So first and foremost, and then feel free to add text questions as I go on with this, and I will take them as they go. But one of the questions that I do wonder about is um so that limit is a year, obviously. Do you think that anything before a year is just unacceptable? Do you feel like there are some exceptions to that, or that year is just that sweet spot?
Yeah, let me go back to that slide. It was near the beginning. Yeah, so I think a year is definitely that sweet spot where most employers are kind of expecting you to ask for a raise. Sometimes they'll even kind of give you an annual raise. It kind of depends on what that job situation is. But like I said, there are exceptions, like a title change, or if you get a promotion before that year mark, you can definitely ask for a raise then. Or if you feel like you've really learned a lot and your job situation has like significantly changed from when you first were hired on, say like things are really changing in your job and suddenly you have a lot more responsibilities, or your responsibilities are significantly different from when you started out in with like before that year mark, you can ask for like a merit increase at that time as well. So you kind of have to feel it out.
Okay, and looks like we're starting to get some questions flowing in. So,
Yeah,
let's
cool.
start with this one. Can you share any personal experiences with negotiations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working as a PA currently for about a year and a half now. And so I definitely ask for a raise at the 1 year mark. Thankfully, my job is unionized, but I'm currently a remote worker, and so I'm technically not eligible for union benefits. So, because I'm really close with my coworkers, I was chatting with them, and it seems like, based off of what they told me, that most unionized production assistants get an annual increase kind of automatically and it's expected. But since I was not unionized, I did not automatically get that benefit. And also for my employer, I didn't really hear anything from them. So I kind of assumed if I didn't ask, I wouldn't be getting a raise. And all of my peers who were working the same job as me would be. So I've definitely decided to take the initiative to ask for a raise kind of near the 1 year mark. I think I waited like maybe a month over, but I requested a meeting maybe like a month before, and then we kind of scheduled out a quick meeting at some time. And once I did, once I was in that room, my line producer was really friendly, very open to talking and chatting about getting a raise. I definitely highballed my estimate, but I feel really good about highballing it because in the end, he kind of matched my salary to the rest of the PAs who were unionized. So originally I was actually making less than my other PAs because I wasn't unionized. And then but after I negotiated, not only did I match their raise, but after they got a raise, my salary was also matched to that. So it was it at least to me it felt like a double raise almost. So thank you, Union. I also helped an artist friend of mine in her negotiation process. Her negotiation process was much more difficult than mine. She was kind of asking it at a non-traditional time, kind of like Krishan um, mentioned. Basically, she was an artist based in Canada, but we're an LA-based studio, and so she was, I think, somewhat unionized. I'm not really sure what her situation is, but it was a little bit different. But she was also speaking with all of her peers and realizing that when all of the artists were due to start on board on our show, that they would all be getting raises except for her. So she was kind of in the same boat as me, where she really wanted to ask for that raise because she felt like she deserved it. She was definitely in a much tougher situation than mine because she had already asked for a raise and was denied by our line producer, but she kind of came to me. She also went to her direct manager and asked for support. So it got pretty intense, but like her direct manager sat in the meeting with the line producer to argue her case to get her raise. I'm not sure what the end result was, but definitely the line producer was much more willing to hear her out, seeing that she got so much extra support from other people. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's just some personal experiences negotiating.
Okay, our next question is negotiating is very new to me. I wonder if this could also apply to freelancing.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally applies to freelancers. Freelance is definitely a little bit of a different situation compared to full time. Like you saw in some of my slides, like those benefits kind of are a little bit probably are off the table if you're a freelancer, unfortunately, but you can definitely argue for a merit increase. And definitely negotiating when you get that job offer, that's definitely crucial, especially if you're freelance because you need to cover your bottom lines. You don't have those extra benefits that you kind of need to cover on your own. So definitely can apply to freelancers.
Okay. Next question. Is the goal in the negotiation meeting exactly to have an answer result from your employer by the end of the meeting, or is it to have your employer start considering?
Yeah, I think the goal of negotiating is really to make them aware of your intentions and your needs. So really, it's like about advocating for yourself. You're not necessarily waiting for an answer at that time because most of the time when you're in that meeting with your manager actually doesn't have the power to actually give you a raise right then and there. It's kind of an HR thing as well. So they need to have follow-up meetings on their end to actually make sure that raise goes through. So they can't actually they don't have the power to actually give you an answer in that meeting, but it's to kind of get them on your side and have them advocate for you to HR and what other processes in the back end. So it's get them on your side to get you that raise and also to make them aware of the number that you want so they can bring that number to HR as well.
Next question. I am curious about the about people who are contractors negotiating on the start.
Definitely. Could you maybe expand a little bit more about that question? I'm not quite sure what you're asking. If you
Okay.
could type out more or if you want to unmute.
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry, I was the one that asked that. I'm sorry, I wasn't very clear on it, but this is my first time like having to work as a contractor, and normally I'm used
Mhm.
to working full time.
Gotcha.
So the negotiation's kind of different for me because, like you said earlier, with freelancers and such, we
Hmm.
don't, we aren't, we have to calculate for our own benefits because we have to pay for that and our own
Yeah.
expenses. So like I'm kind of like not sure about like the job hasn't been offered yet, but
Mm-hmm.
but they've given me a range. I'm trying to wonder like how because I've coming in with experience but not quite related to that role, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
also like, it's like I'm there because of my experience as an animator, it kind of expanded my they kind of expanded the opportunity, so it's now
Mm.
just not just editing, I would be also animating. So I was
Gotcha. So
wondering
they're kind of
how,
adding to your job responsibilities
yeah, so
more
I'm kind of
than what you
wondering,
used to.
yeah, so I'm like, well, they gave me a fixed range, but do I have the ability to even like ask for more considering, or,
Hmm.
how would you approach that?
Gotcha.
Sorry.
So are they considering like kind of so it seems like they're considering adding to your job responsibilities, but not necessarily adding to what they're paying you. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I see. Definitely, that's such an unfortunate situation. I'm sorry to hear that. Um, but I definitely think that because I think kind of on this bullet point, it falls into kind of the significant changes in job category where I think you're definitely within your rights to ask for a raise or at least some sort of rate change because they are asking you to do additional or different job responsibilities than before. I currently am not super experienced with freelance. I'll be honest with that, but I highly encourage you, since you're part of the AIA Career Summit, please go into the Discord and ask around, ask for other freelancers on what their rates for animating are for certain situations. You might be able to gain more insight on what like a reasonable range for that new kind of like new like roles and tasks should be. Definitely ask around. I think you're definitely within your rights to ask for a raise in that circumstance.
Thank you.
Yeah, and definitely because it seems like they're changing the role, but you might also want to consider asking them for a new contract as well, because that sounds like you're doing different work. If it's not covered in your previous contract, you'll need a new one. And that's kind of once you receive that new contract, that's when you can kind of start the negotiation process with some numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Should I direct? Should I direct? Okay. Should I should I ask my manager or should I ask my producer for a raise?
It kind of depends on who, I guess, controls the purse strings on your show. Generally, it's the producer or line producer that controls the budget. It kind of depends also on your relationship and how comfortable you feel talking to people. But I encourage you to really go directly to who can control the budget, which would be your producer. Um, in my case, I also went to my manager first, but that was more so to get some practice, to get feedback on my current workload, on how I was doing, my job performance. So you can go to your manager, but ultimately your manager can't really do much. So when I talked to my manager, she told me, "Hey, schedule a second meeting to go to the producer." So eventually, you probably will need to go talk to your producer face to face.
Okay. We're gonna do a couple more here, and then I do want to open up to the floor. So, um, do you have any insight or advice for people who sometimes feel that they use qualifying or more timid language when asking for what they want? Are there cases where qualifying or softening language should be used?
A good question. Definitely, you don't want whatever when you're negotiating, you definitely want to come at across as self-assured, making sure you have that inner confidence. So kind of calculating your own like personal communication style and making sure that you're comfortable in the conversation can also really show your inner confidence. But at the same time, of course, you want to set clear expectations. So while you can use qualifying or softening language, you want to make sure that even within that, you're still being clear. It doesn't have to be like strong or forward, but you need to make sure that your communication is clear. So not making it too jumbled. But also, if you want to kind of shake that habit, I encourage you to practice with some people. Practice with your peers, practice with your friends or family who don't even work in the industry. That's fine too. Getting some practice with either changing your communication style or using the language, using those like words and hitting those points in the style that you feel most comfortable in.
Okay. Next question. What about small studios? What if they won't have enough budget to have a raise even for the next 1 to 2 years? What should we do?
That's definitely kind of a personal decision at that point. If you're kind of aware of a small studio situation and they're unable to give you a raise, it's up to you whether you think that the job opportunity that the studio provides at the current salary that you're making is worth it to you to stay or not. I encourage you to still ask for a meeting and ask for a raise. Even if you don't think that they have the budget for it, making them aware that you are interested in a raise is very important as well, especially for a small studio. I think in any studio, no matter how small or how big, wants to grow and wants to get better. So if they have employees that are asking for raise, that's kind of a signal to the company that they need to do better and up their production and provide more for their employees.
Okay. So if it's okay with you, Alice, let's move over to a bit more personal questions, one-on-ones, specifically for the last three people that made their text comments, because these look a bit more personal. I kind of want you guys to be able to, talk to Alice about your questions. So at least for the last three that commented their questions, um, if I'm pronouncing this right, Xingru Tan. If you want to, come up on air and ask your question to Alice, you'll be first up.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So they gave me, we had an interview. I was working in the studio. We had an interview for the next contract. And so I asked for a raise and we agreed on everything. But when I received my offer, it was like half of the amount of the raise I asked for. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I mean, this already passed, but I'm just wondering, like, what in the future, if anything like this happen, like, what's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, definitely. Let me go back to this last slide. So that's kind of like the situation where you felt like the negotiation meeting went really well. You felt like they were all on your side, but when actually came the case and they gave you that offer in writing, it was different from what you expected. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so in that case, if you felt like that situation wasn't ideal, you might want to request for another meeting uh, to really argue your point to get that number that you wanted. Additionally, it might be something that you could have repositioned your reach number. So before you went into that meeting, maybe you should have asked for a number that was just a little bit higher than what you actually asked for during that meeting. So maybe when they negotiated you down, it would actually kind of be near what you wanted. Does that make sense? So maybe shooting a little bit higher next time
Mhm. Okay.
because you know that they're probably going to bring it down.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, after giving a range and the offer was the minimum, is it bad to ask for more?
Yeah.
Let's see. I think um I think that's why I think you could request for another meeting. You totally can if you're feeling confident and you can bring some new information to that meeting. I think at that point, it might be kind of hard to argue for more at that point. So this is why
Yeah.
I advocate to ask for a reach number, not a reach range. You don't want to give ranges during your negotiations because they'll always go for the lowest number in that range.
Yeah.
So definitely that's one mistake that you did. You always want to give a hard and fast number. Do not give a range.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, another like quick question. Is it better to give like a specific number or like a fake, like just like I don't know, end with something like 1,500 or like should I give like very specific, like go in like 1,000, like 300 and something number?
Oh, I see. I think like where it gets the nitty-gritty is kind of up to you on whether you feel like those specific numbers are going to help you or not. So if you feel like the difference between like 356 and like 357 is significant to you, you should really go for exact. But if you're fine with kind of having kind of a range, it's fine if you're a little bit more loose with it. So you can either go like what I like on this side, like the $1 to $2 hour more, or you can kind of calculate specifically what like a 15% increase looks like, and then kind of give that number. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your
Yeah, totally.
answer.
So sorry that happened, but
Yes.
hopefully you can learn and do better
Yes.
next time.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Shalini, you're up next with your question.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shalini, and thank you
Shalini,
so
my bad.
much. No worries. Thank you so much for this. This is actually, I think, something really important that like needs to be talked about.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I totally agree. I think like especially like Asians in animation, I feel like sometimes we're taught to not speak up and advocate for ourselves
yeah,
when like this is how you get better and move forward in your career.
exactly. And so my question is about if you would be able to expand on how you get close to others while being remote, because like it's, you're not in a physical setting and like close enough where you can actually, I believe you said like you knew of other people's rates or their salaries of the people that were in unions. So I guess like how do you go about doing that? Because it's like a very touchy subject, right? Like the actual like pay amount.
Yeah. I feel like everyone thinks it's kind of a taboo subject, but I feel like once one person like breaks the ice, everyone's kind of like on board to discuss it. That's kind of like what ends up happening is like people are kind of like unsure in the beginning, but once you get closer, everyone gets a little bit more comfortable. But as for like getting close to people while being remote, I'm currently working fully remotely, so I definitely understand the struggle. Something that I really advocate for. It doesn't always work because work is really busy, but especially if you're like it's like kind of a hybrid situation. Some people are in person, some people are remote, or if everyone's remote, it's good to have like remote events that are not work focused. So you can like take initiative and host like a just like a getting to know each other icebreaker or like a movie or like a watching animated shorts together kind of like get together remotely with your coworkers. You can do that during lunch breaks or if people are willing to like schedule time outside of work to do that together, something non-work related to really get to know your coworkers and understand where they're coming from. Definitely on my show, at the beginning, we were definitely not as close, but my show where it's a really good show, but it's a lot harder now. A lot of our workloads have really increased but we're kind of like in it together. We've gotten a lot closer due to the struggles at work and we kind of share and support each other in that way. So kind of becoming friends, becoming more familiar with your coworkers, kind of organically and also like initiating more connections can really help bridge that gap and get people talking a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I guess my other part of this is like what happens when like I mean I guess and like your case like when somebody finds out that they're getting paid less or maybe even like a lot less. I guess that's kind of where my like I don't know my thoughts are at too.
Mm-hmm. That was kind of the case in my studio where I found out I was literally getting the lowest paid in the entire show. Like every single person was getting paid more than me. But I feel like it's not something to be embarrassed about. It's kind of like a launching off point. At least for me, I felt more comfortable to advocate for myself because I knew that I was being undervalued and because I knew that my work was just as valuable as the rest of my peers, and I knew how much they were getting paid for. And so at least to me, most people in animation are really nice people, and ideally they would support you if you come to them and kind of tell them that you're not making as much as them. At least when I told my coworkers, they were like, "Oh my God, you need to go to the manager and tell them to give them more money and stuff." So hopefully they'll rally and support behind you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alice.
Yeah.
And last person is Rez, and then anybody else that have any more questions, you can start raising your hand, and we'll start getting everybody one by one.
Hi, Alice. Hi, Krishan. It's basically like basing your rate. Like, is it cool you could use the Animation Guild wage survey to kind of like besides Glassdoor and feedback from peers? Because I noticed sometimes the current rate is a little bit under the guild rate. So is it
Hmm.
fair to use the Animation Guild survey as
Yeah,
a base rate?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think, yeah, that's definitely another resource. I should have put that on my presentation. But yes, absolutely use the Animation Guild as your rates. Even if you're not a unionized, even if you're not working in a union position or are not unionized studios, I think it's still a good number to aim for. Yeah. That was kind of like my case where I'm not unionized, but my studio was unionized, but like I wasn't. So it was a little complicated, but I decided to reach for that union number anyways. Yeah, absolutely. And also salty animators. That's another one, but that one's definitely a lot of more of a mixed bag rather than like a set standard.
Okay, looks like we don't have any more questions here. Let me see over here. Let me see if I have anything in the vault of questions to ask. Oh, I have one that I was interested in asking you.
Mm.
Um, in terms of I believe it was the slide with values and things of that nature. Which out of these four would you say is the most important, or are they all very important to you? In terms of negotiating when you're
Yeah, it's a good
gathering information and stuff.
It's a good question. I think, at least to me, I think the one that you should focus on most is probably value. You can talk about your skills and you can talk about your growth and you can talk about numbers, but ultimately, all of those kind of like umbrella up to value. How much value are you bringing to your company through your skills, through your growth, and through those hard numbers?
Okay, good.
Yeah, where can you access recordings? Yes, they'll be posted on YouTube later. I'm not sure when, but later at some
Okay.
point.
So let's see. Do we have? It looks like this. So, do we have any more questions before we wrap it up today? Want to make sure we get everybody is heard and everybody thing. And if not, if that's fine with you, Alice, we can wrap it up a little early today.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hopefully, hopefully this session was valuable and feel free to email me if you have any questions or follow-ups about your specific situation. I'll try and help as much as I can. Um, I'll type in my email here in the chat.
And thank you guys all for coming. Thank you, Alice, for this great presentation and giving the thanks out to the AIA team for organizing this whole summit. I believe we do have a couple more events happening before the end of the month. So if you guys are able to check those out, those will be great. That would be great. Um, I will drop this over in the chat so you can look at what we have going on for the last couple days, last week or so of this month. And if you guys are interested in joining us at AIA and helping out, feel free to come to our website and apply to some volunteer positions. We're always looking, for the help, and we're always here to help the community out. Um, But again, thank you guys for everybody that came out for this and whatnot. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Y'all have a good night and you guys be safe out there.